Okay, Florence, we're here at Yorkshire Sculpture Park where you're rehearsing and bringing together your huge performance, Make, which was inspired by behind-the-scenes visit to YSP in 2010. It really fascinates me how that glimpse of what goes on behind closed doors really kind of informed this piece.
Yeah, it was a particular moment here, actually, of seeing the Elizabeth Fink sculpture being wheeled by a forklift truck with it looked like a hanky over the face of the sculpture. It was very beautiful, and seeing some of the cleaning that happened. So I was really fascinated by how it's a lot like this. All the kinds of gestures and actions that take place that kind of lead up to the final product or the maintenance of these things. Yeah.
And it was fascinating for me because obviously that's something that we usually keep quite hidden. So I'm used to working on, for example, the big exhibition at the moment. All that happens behind the scenes, and there's this huge flurry of activity, particularly in the few days before we open. And then all trace of that is dusted away and we open to the public and everything is static. So it is fascinating for me how you're actually going to interpret that, I guess.
Well, this is all about exposing the gestures and actions behind the sculptural product. So not only just the exposing the kind of gestures and actions of the institution of sculpture, like YSP, but also in the actual making. So in terms of, working with plaster, working with wood, working with, in this piece, it's particular wood, tape, and polystyrene, so we then will continuously reference these kind of gestures.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence that it's a female cast or ensemble who've brought together, and it's practitioners and non-practitioners who've brought
It's
together?
mainly dancers, but but from very wide, a broad kind of background of dance. There's dancers from action theatre to releasing dance to very kind of formal trainings in dance. So, those kind of practices can be text-based, or they incorporate a lot of interdisciplinary kind of practices. Yeah.
And the fact that they're mainly women, or they're all women?
Yes, all women.
And is that a sort of deliberate comment against the apparent macho-ness of sculpture that it's making? Yes,
definitely. I was quite curious about kind of looking, in a very kind of reductive way, kind of looking through books on minimalism and just noticing there not being many women, in a kind of more traditional sense, not now, but in a kind of more traditional sense, being very male dominated, and also the absence of the body being kind of referenced. They're not being the body referenced in those work, and it being very kind of hard materials like metal, and it's very kind of heavy quality. And I love minimalism, and I love the way it works with space. So that's what I'm kind of curious about in this piece as well. But then flicking through books on feminist art, and it's like blood, guts, and the body is referenced everywhere, and so I was like, oh, this is really curious. So kind of wanting to put the female body in this process as well, sort of next to kind of, there's a section of the piece which is sort of to do with framing, and it's very kind of, quite cold in a sense, and very, there's not much blood and guts in there. No, there's not any of it in any of the piece, but so kind of placing the female body kind of in amongst objects, in amongst structure, in amongst form,
And I'm very curious to see how it's all going to come together in Longside Gallery, which is, it's a huge space, and you've got the landscape beyond, which in itself is a sculpted landscape that somebody created a couple of 100 years ago. How have you found it actually working in that space itself?
First of all, it was quite intimidating because it's vast, and but the piece really needs that. It's very, very exciting. It's incredible being able to look out and onto the horizon. I'm not going to use those windows though, because it's a bit, they kind of upstage the work maybe, but the piece really needs to be able to kind of be huge in that way, or kind of in a way referencing that kind of huge kind of masculine kind of scale and quite kind of macho element to minimalism, of the kind of big big gestures through space. So it kind of needed to kind of spread out in that way. Yeah, it's been great. It's been a great opportunity because it's quite rare to have that opportunity to be able to be that large in a space, really, use a scale.
And is this sort of the largest type of thing you've done, or is it?
Yeah, it is really. I've worked on group pieces, but I'm mainly a solo performance maker. Yeah, and I've done lots of pieces to one-to-one audiences and things like that, which is all about very, very small details and kind of enhancing that and kind of amplifying detail. But this is not about that at all. So it's been a steep learning curve for me. It's been fantastic. Yeah.
And do you see this informing your practice as you go forward?
Yeah, hugely. I really felt like through a lot of my practice being working with movement and working with art materials, I wanted to really frame it, use the frame of an institution like this that's about sculpture. And so, being able to place my work within the right kind of context in that way. My practice going, I think it's to do with scale, really. It feels really interesting to work in that way, yeah.